Hello, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Today we're in the sewing room, so I'm going to be showing you just a beginner's guide on how to sew straight lines. So there's a few different techniques that you can use to sew a straight line, and a lot of people have a lot of trouble just trying to sew a simple straight line, especially beginners. So this is just to show you how easy it actually is. So stick around. I'm going to use a couple of my machines to show you a couple of different techniques. And we'll be through quickly. Now, if I do a close-up of my stitch plate, you can see lots of numbers here. You can see 4/8, which is ½ an inch, 5/8, 6/8, or you've got 1.5 centimeters and 2 centimeters just there. So you can actually use these lines as your stitching guide. So if I put my fabric down at, say, the 15 where the 1.5 is there, and just put my foot down, then what I can do is just continue to sew and watch this line. So I'm not watching where the needle's coming down, I'm actually watching this line here. So I'm going to go slowly. And all I'm doing is looking at this here as I'm sewing. So I'm not watching anything that's going on over here. I'm purely looking at this line here. So you can see I'm going nice and straight. If I decide my eyes veer off from this straight edge and I start looking at the needle, which is what I'm going to do now, you can see that I'm not actually going straight because all I'm doing is watching the needle. So I veered off a little bit. So it's really important when you've selected a stitch width that you actually keep your eyes focused on the particular line that you're actually following. So there's lots of markers that you can actually use on your machine. Sometimes I want a stitch width that's much wider than any markings that I've got on here. You can actually use a little bar that comes out of your machine if your machine has one. This one I've actually lost. So the other alternative is just to get a piece of ribbon with some tape on it. Decide where you want to have your stitch guide or your seam guide, and place that tape down. Now I don't need to place it all the way to the back of the machine because it's the front section that I need to be keeping an eye on. So say this is my stitch width here. So the inside edge of this piece of ribbon here is where I want my stitch. To start sewing there, all I need to do is place my fabric along the edge of the ribbon there, and use the ribbon as the guide. Probably should straighten that ribbon a little bit. So, see how the ribbon hasn't gone far further than the needle? There's no need to have it back there. So if I will keep an eye out just here, in this area here, then I'm going to continue to sew a nice straight stitch. Keep your eye out on the ribbon just here, and there's no need to look over here when you're sewing. Just keep going. As you improve your skill, you can go a little bit faster as well. But just keep your eye on the ribbon. And there we go. We've got a nice even width seam all the way across. And that's just by looking at the ribbon and not by looking at the needle. Now if I just want to do a regular straight stitch, all I'm going to do is place my fabric down, and you can see the fabric is just on the very edge of my foot here. So it hasn't gone beyond to any of the lines, it's just on the very edge of my foot. A lot of the times when I'm sewing, I actually like to use the edge of my foot as my guide. So all you need to do is start. So once you start, you can do a back stitch just to secure those stitches, and keep on watching the edge of the foot here as you're sewing. So I'm not watching the middle here where the needle's coming down. I'll start going wonky if I do that, but I'm just keeping my eye on the very edge of the foot there. As you gain some confidence, you can speed up, and just be careful to keep your eye on the edge of the foot. And that's it. So there we go, we've got a nice evenly straight edge all the way down, and that's because we didn't look at the needle coming down on your foot, down in the middle of your work. Now if we want to, we can use any one of these lines across here to sew our seam, and we can also use the lines on the opposite side if we needed to. Alright, so I'm just going to do the same piece of fabric, and I'm going to do a 5/8 inch seam here, and what I'm going to do is follow that 5/8 inch line. So I'm just going to look at that as I'm sewing. Place the fabric down to where the 5/8 of an inch is, just there, and start sewing. Do a back stitch, and remember to watch the 5/8. Now I'm not watching the 2 centimetre, I'm watching the 5/8 inch line. So keep your eye on that, not on the middle of the needle. There we go. So there we have the second straight line using the 5/8 inch seam guide. This one's the edge of the foot, this one's a 5/8 inch seam guide. Now I've come over to my other machine, and I've got this bar here, and most machines when you buy them will have a bar like this, similar to this anyway, that you can stick into the back of your machine. So if I put this one in at the back of my machine, I can adjust the width of my stitch distance. So I can adjust this bar to any distance that I like. Now if I were quilting and I wanted to have straight quilting lines evenly apart, what I will do is put my row of stitching underneath the bar, put my foot down, and start sewing. Now as I'm sewing, this bar here is what I'm looking at, so I'm following that black line of stitching and using the bar as my guide. And then if I want to do the same thing again, I'll go to the next line, which is the red one that I've just done. So all I'm going to do now is use my seam guide and follow the red line of stitching that I've just done. Keep on looking at that red line. And there you can see 3 rows of stitching, and they're all not the same distance apart. Okay, so this is great if you're doing quilting. You can just set your seam guide to any distance that you like, and make sure that your quilting lines are the same distance apart. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If there's anything else that you think you might need help with, let me know. Just post a comment in the links below, and I'd be happy to make a little video for you just to show you how to do maybe a boxed corner, or how to go around curves, or how to do applique. Anything that you're struggling with, let me know and I'll get a video done for you. Catch you next time.